I'm just gonna... Alright, so this war is often described as the most controversial war in our country's history. What do you think?
Do I think it was controversial? Yeah, it was very controversial. There were a lot of people who didn't believe we should be there, that we didn't have a strong interest in being in Vietnam, that too many American kids were dying for no real purpose. It wasn't like World War I or World War II, where we were either attacked or our friends were being attacked, and we thought we had a strong interest in fighting an enemy that everybody agreed on.
Alright, what were you doing during this war?
Well, the war started at least it got heated up in the mid to late 60s. I was just getting out of high school then. And then I was in college from 69 to 73. And that was probably when it was at its peak.
Were you anti-war?
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Why did you do what you did during the war, and what are your feelings then and now about the choices you made?
What did I do? Well, I mean, I wasn't an active demonstrator. I was in college, and of course, one of the things at that time, when you went to college, you got a student deferment, and that meant you were not eligible for the draft. Now, I would have gone to college anyway. There were some people that probably went to college so that they wouldn't be eligible for the draft. I would have gone to college anyway. So being ineligible for the draft was like a nice side benefit for me. Would I have done anything differently? No, I don't think I would have.
Alright, did you participate in any demonstrations for or against the war?
Not active demonstrations, I don't think you could say I did. My sentiments were against the war, but I wasn't really all that involved, I guess.
What are your opinions of the My Lai massacre?
The My Lai massacre? It's been a long time since I've thought about that. I think for one thing they could have prosecuted some of the higher up officers. The one who took most of the blame was a lieutenant, if I'm not mistaken, William Calley. And he certainly didn't do what he did on his own. There were people above him who never really were investigated or prosecuted for anything.
What are your feelings about the killing of students at Kent State on May 4th, 1970?
Well, that was terrible. Again, I don't have a real clear recollection of the specifics, except it was a peaceful demonstration by the students, and the National Guard was there to try to keep order, but I don't recall that the students did anything antagonistic, and they never really did determine why the guardsmen started firing. In fact, right now there's a guy who says he has an audio recording that is being enhanced, and he believes you can hear someone ordering fire, but I'm not sure if that's clear or not.
What are your opinions about how our country ended its involvement in the war?
I guess I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other about that. We just more or less eventually pulled out. I know some people feel like we left with our tail between our legs. There wasn't any good way to end that war that would have satisfied those people.
Do you think our country should reinstate the draft? Why or why not?
That's a hard one, because if they did, you would be eligible. On the other hand, there's a lot of people that think during Iraq, if we had reinstated the draft so that the sons of a lot of wealthy pro-war people were put at risk, there would have been more pressure on the government to not get involved in that war, and that the draft serves a good purpose that way, because it's easy to send somebody else's kids off to die in a war. So in that respect, I guess I'd say that I think it might serve a purpose, but I don't want to see my son subject to the draft.
Do you think the Vietnam memorials in Washington, D.C. are appropriate? Have you been there in person?
I have been there in person. I think it's very powerful when you visit that memorial and you see all of those names, and the stone is reflective, and so you can see yourself while you're looking at the names, and you can also see a flag from another monument in the background. And what people do, what I did, is if you know someone who died there, you can go to the book. There's a big book, and you find that person's name alphabetically, and it tells you then what panel the name is on. The panels all have numbers, and so you can go to the number, and then it tells you what line the name is on. Panel 38, line 12, and you can go down and you find that person's name, and you can touch the name because it's etched in the stone. It's very powerful.
Do you think our country could get involved in another Vietnam?
I don't know. Some people would argue that we already are. We're involved in a war that is really an internal war for the people of that country, and we are in the middle of it and have become a target for one side, and we have young men dying over there, and we're pouring money into that war, and there is no easy exit strategy to get out of that war. So you could argue that we are in another Vietnam right now, although there's not nearly as many soldiers dying. I'm afraid that we could get involved in another Vietnam.
Some people say this generation will never be able to come to terms with itself over this war. There is just too much lingering sadness and bitterness. What do you think about this statement? I guess I wouldn't agree with that. I don't think that the majority of people who lived through Vietnam that their lives are driven by what happened during that time. There certainly are some, but I think a lot of the people have put it behind them and are happy to have put it behind them. And there certainly are some people who, I guess in my opinion, are supportive of the current war and are just blind to the fact that we walked right into the same kind of situation all over again. All right, I think that's it.